I'll tell you, as a professional guide, as a hunter, as a botanist who goes out looking for plants and Indian ruins, this is the one mountain range I will not go into alone.
On the outskirts of Phoenix, Arizona sits the infamous Superstition Mountain Range, a grouping of massive peaks and landforms which have come to be known as some of the most haunted and most dangerous in the entire United States. While we were wrapping up our series of paranormal investigations in Arizona, we knew for a fact that we had to stop by the Superstitions to see just how haunted they were for ourselves. When we got into town for our investigation that night, we met up with Corey, a local professional guide who specializes in taking people hiking throughout various wildlife areas in Arizona, and we headed into the Superstitions wilderness. It's definitely a spooky walk, even in the daytime. The way that the land feels, how it speaks to you as you head down the twisting paths, and the power that the area has is indescribable. It's a very spiritual, yet also frightening experience. Corey is an insanely knowledgeable guide who researches the paranormal world as a side gig and knows a thing or two about the animal and plant life in these areas. For example, check out right here as he grabs a prickly pear cactus, lights it on fire to singe the needles off, and peels it back to give us a taste of the desert fruit. It was pretty insane how knowledgeable Corey was, and the fruit was pretty tasty. As we made our way back to a good vantage point where we could see the mountains and conduct our interview, I couldn't help but notice the stifling feel of the environment around the Superstitions. Something was off. I could feel it in my chest. This area has seen some crazy negative events in the past, and I'm sure it will see even more in the future. I guarantee that what Corey is about to tell you will blow your mind.
Wait for that to pass. Fuck on my chi.
Spooky voices from the cactus field. So why don't you introduce yourself? You can look right at the camera, and then you got it.
All right. I'm Corey Daniel, professional guide down here out of Phoenix, Arizona. What else? I don't know where to go. Where do you want me to go? I'm Corey Daniel, professional guide down here in Phoenix, Arizona with the Paranormal Files, and we are standing on the northwest edge of the Superstition Mountain Range. What you're looking at here in the background is 5 interconnecting volcanic calderas, which are underground volcanic systems, which exploded or formed, more appropriately, a dome about 28 to 30 million years ago. And they used to be about 3 times higher than they are now. They have worn down over the years. Back when this was blowing up for about 5 to 8 million years, geologists believe, this whole area was uninhabitable. There was just gas and clouds and ash everywhere. These cliffs you're seeing right behind me are welded tough and tough. The Superstition Mountain Range is agreed upon by all geologists to be probably the most vicious and roughest mountain range in the lower 48 states. It is not a place to be taken lightly. There are deaths up here regularly every year from hikers, and that does not include the murders. It does not include the mysterious disappearances dating all the way back to the days of the Jesuits, and that's why we're talking with the Paranormal Files today. Everything in the Superstition Mountains centers around Apaches and gold. And it's ironic because there's never been any gold found in this mountain range. In fact, geologists say that this type of rock formation does not allow for gold. There's been gold all the way around it. If you go off to the west, we're going to be at Goldfield in a little bit here, there is fields of gold. It's called Goldfield, and they mine gold there. One of the richest gold mines in the entire state historically has been in that little town, the ghost town that we're going to be in. If you go to the other side, the town of Superior, Globe in Miami, Arizona, not Florida. There's gold all through there, and copper and other heavy metals as well, silver and some other stuff, but nothing really in the mountain range. That being said, the stories and the hunters and the gold hunters and treasure hunters have been coming out here for hundreds and hundreds of years. This mountain range it's gone by dozens of names. Today it's called the Superstitions. If you're a local, you know it as the Soups. If you want to sound like a Phoenician from Phoenix, we call them the Soups. It's had dozens and dozens of names depending on who was living here at the time. The Apaches knew this mountain range as the abode of the thunder gods, and they still refer to it as that. This mountain range, for some reason, and the geologists and the climatologists don't know, it makes weather. During the monsoon seasons and even for the winter rains, our rains are split in two, January, February, and then July and August, by 4 months of drought on both sides. These mountain ranges can be just completely full of weather, and when it does, being a volcanic drainage, a decomposing caldera, You get floods coming out of Boulder Canyon, Peralta Canyon. I mean, crazy floods. And that's the flood that actually wiped out the town of Goldfield we're going to be at later, back in, I want to say, 1898. And it flooded out the entire town and filled up all the passages and scrambled all the gold in the mines. They had to shut it down. They couldn't get back to the gold again. So it's a treacherous mountain range. I'll tell you, as a professional guide, as a hunter, as a botanist who goes out looking for plants and Indian ruins, this is the one mountain range I will not go into alone. I have an extremely healthy respect for this mountain range. I backpack solo and backcountry off trail as a minimalist, and I don't go in here alone. There are people who have hiked these mountains for years and years and one day just wind up dead. The gold stories that permeate this entire mountain range all center around the Peralta family. And Peralta was down here in the mid-1800s. He supposedly found a mine. He didn't find a mine. He found gold, and he was mining it right back. You can see that little peak right back in there in the foreground. Just over that, that is Massacre Grounds. And Massacre Grounds is where Peralta's men, allegedly 400 of them, died. They were massacred by the Apaches. Like I said, the Apache calls it the abode of the thunder gods. It is equivalent to a church to them, and they wanted Peralta out of here. He would not leave. He even informed them that they were all no longer Apache, but they were now Mexicans, to which they laughed at, and the war was on. While this is the story, and a lot of historians will tell this story, there's no actual proof, and it's one of those weird things. There's no hard copy on that. People have looked and looked and looked. However, people have a lot of paranormal experiences right back in there on Massacre Grounds. Apparently 398 people, as the story goes, were massacred there. 2 jumped over the mountain and ran back to Mexico, and 1 made it and told the stories. They tried to get the Mexican government to come back up and start mining again, but the Mexican-American War was going on at the time, and 12 years later the Gadsden Purchase happened, and this became part of the U.S. territories. During that fight, during that massacre, there were about 80 to 100 mules that had saddles on, and they had gold concentrate in them. Those mules ran out into the desert, and they were never seen again. They believe the Apaches found the mules, ate them or sold them, and took all that gold and piled it up. They didn't really know what to do with it. Gold, they knew it was valuable to the white people. There is confirmation from Dr. Thorne years later, but to skip to the end of the story here, when the U.S. cavalry came over during the Apache Wars, they started finding, a couple people found some actual saddlebags, and it did confirm this story. 2 were found, definitely, and about another 9 or 12 allegedly. People retired on it, and then this became killing fields. I believe there is a book yet to be written about psychopaths and psychopathy in the Old West. You know, we romanticize about the cowboys and the Indians, about the gambling and the shootouts and the law enforcement, but what you never hear about are the dregs of society that went west, that got pushed west on the frontier, where there was no law, to where they could dry gulch anyone and take their wagon and their horse and just commit murders willy-nilly. It was well known back east during that time that there was gold up in these mountains and bags of it laying all over the place. And there's a lot of evidence that people were coming out here just bushwhacking people left and right. They found some bones not too long ago over that other hill on the other side of that mountain, and they think it may have been part of the Peralta massacre, but they're not sure. They've been finding headless people in here, bodies minus heads, and then they'll find the head months later or years later, like wedged in a crack, you know, on some cliff 10 miles away, right? The primary story that these mountain ranges, that this mountain range delivers to us, is that of Jacob Waltz and the Lost Dutchman. And he was a Prussian. He wasn't a Dutchman. He's actually Prussian. He came out here, and his girlfriend at the time, Ken T, she was an Apache. She showed him something up here. Whether she showed him a mine or Jesuit gold or the bags of the gold, we don't know. But those 2 were pulling gold out of here. Where that mine was, we don't know, because Jacob Waltz took that knowledge to his death. On his deathbed, he allegedly said that the entrance to his mine is where the shadow of Weaver's Needle is cast at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. People have been looking with ground-penetrating radar where the shadow is with the sun on every day of the year. People have been at this for 100 years looking for this thing. No one's ever found it. So that's the primary story that surrounds. There's about 300 books, documentaries written about that lost gold story. And if you're chasing gold, this is a great place to, you know, tear up boots and kill horses out here, because it's a very, very rugged mountain range. There have been people looking for this gold mine ever since about 1891, 1892, just after Jacob Waltz died. And that's when the headless people come in. Like I said, there's famous stories. I'm not getting into all of them here. There's books dedicated to the people who have come out here from the east looking for this gold mine, only to have their bodies found later, minus a head. Right, so those stories are everywhere. This is the roughest mountain range in the lower 48 states, and it has a hell of a story in terms of deaths surrounding it. A lot of people believe, and I heard this today, I was listening to some older videos about this mountain range. They believe that there's still a society of either Pima or Apache. I've heard it was the Apache that still protect this mountain range. A small society that protects it physically by killing people who get too close to the caves. Today's story I heard was from a gentleman related to Jesse James down there. Actually, he works at, or he did work down there at Goldfield. He said it was the Pima, but I don't know. The gold doesn't interest me much as a researcher, and you know, as a child of the desert down here. It's the occultic side, personally, and I search out the ancient stories. There are stories of caves in this entire mountain range, and some of those stories center around people like the Phoenix Herald back in the 1800s had a story about a gentleman who was up here chasing horses, and he was up on the side of a hill, and he went into a cave, and he found copper axes. And he found the bones of about 7 giants, people about 8 to 10 feet tall, right? And if you follow this genre of research, all the Native Americans have stories of giants, as well as little people. But it's the giants down here in the southwest that is the big one. Whether it's the Gila, the Apache called them the Gwindipids, right? The Hopi talk about them, and they all factor into the creation story. But he says that there are definitely caves with giants' bones in them up in there. There was another story David Hatcher Childress told in his one of his last books. He had a friend named Robert who lived in Sedona, and that gentleman was up here in this mountain range, and he found a cave with his friend, and it went down a spiral staircase. It was hand-hewn rock. It was hand carved. They went down and found another chamber deep into the ground. There was another story later on about some people up on the side of, I think it's LaBarge Canyon or Boulder Canyon, I'm not sure, where they talk about finding a cave up on the side. And they go in this little fissure, and this room opens up. I believe there were 6 gentlemen on this expedition. The room fit 5, and one guy looked in another fissure in the back, and he saw a crystal or a glass skull shoved in it. They couldn't get back to it. They tried to dynamite it. It didn't work. They decided just to leave it and seal it back up. So these stories are all through here. You can go the route of the portals, right? You say portals and people think that you're crazy, but the Native Americans believe them. Every single tribe talks about portals opening up to the other side, especially down here in this part of Arizona. Most of the natives up north will tell you about their star brothers and their star sisters. They're not shy. You won't find a native tribe that doesn't believe in aliens, that we were actually seeded here. Most of my native friends will tell you that we were seeded from another race. But down here, there's portals.
If you don't subscribe to our channel already, please click that subscribe button and make sure to turn your notifications on. It helps us so much, and we can't thank all of you enough for the love and support. Also, if you don't follow me, Colin, on Instagram yet, go hit that follow button and go do the same with Peyton, who's even more poppin' on there than me. Getting more followers gets us one step closer to the big dreams that we have for this channel. In addition, if you want to support the show, our merch store is live. We have some pretty flame designs if you ask me. Thank you to everyone that has bought a piece in the past, and trust me, we see the love and recognize it. Anyways, enough shameless self-plugging. Enjoy the episode and stay spooky, guys.
You guys heard of Mount Graham? Up there? Mount Graham, on top of Mount Graham in southern Arizona outside of Tucson, is the largest observatory in the state. You know who owns that? The Vatican. And there's a lens up there called the Lucifer Lens. Can't make this up. L-U-C-I-F-E-R, and it stands for like a long range infrared extra whatever. They had to make it fit, but it is, yeah. That mountain range was sacred. That Mount Graham was sacred to the Apache, and when they went in there in conjunction, the Vatican with U of A down there to put this in, They actually went to court because the Apache said, no, you're not going to be up there doing this. You know, this is one of our sacred mountains. The Vatican put resources and money and battled them in court for years, and they won. I mean, if you go up against the Vatican, you're probably going to lose, right? They got pretty good lawyers, I'm guessing. And they definitely lost, and they built that up there. The Apache say it's because it is a center for power, and they wanted that location for that astronomy, whatever the Vatican is into up here. You got another mountain range off to the, you can't see it from here, off to the southwest corner of Phoenix. It's called the Sierra de las Estrellas, the Mountain of the Stars. And that one features prominently with stories of the Pima and the Gila tribes talking about portals opening up. They say their gods used to come through. They would communicate with people back and forth, right? I'll tell you a story. When I was cowboying in the western part of the state, a little town called Wickiup, I met a gentleman by the name of Jim Miller. He was an old prospector. He was old when I met him. And he told me that sometime in the mid-'80s, a gentleman came through who used to prospect in those mountains around Wickiup, Arizona, back in the 50s. And this guy just got out of the VA hospital back then, apparently. This older guy was old as well. And he said that he used to run a mule and walk up into the Aquarius mountain range right there. And right in the wash, right in, I believe it was Sycamore Wash, he said he would see this portal open right there, right at ground level. And he'd throw rocks into it and it would disappear. So that's what happened. He said he was getting the courage to jump through it, and he never did. He had a plan to, like, I guess, tie a rope down to a chicken and throw it in there and pull it back. If it came out not like all messed up, he was going to go through, but it never opened after he got the courage.
Damn.
These stories are out here. You know, if you talk to people enough, especially the older people, they'll tell you these stories. Native Americans will talk about this stuff all day long. So, you know, I don't know. This mountain also factors into the creation story. Every Native American out here, obviously every people have their own creation story, but the ones out here all center around giants and floods. And all these crags you see up here on the western cliff, how good the light is right now, but those are supposed to be the frozen giants, the people who froze on their way up to the top during that last flood. So, I don't know. It's this mountain range has got a lot of stories. Recently in the 80s, I forget the lady's name. If I get it, some of these things get mixed up in my head after a while, but it was either Arizona Wilder or a Catherine something. She says that she was up Boulder Canyon, which is right up in there, and she was rock hounding, and she went into a cave, and on her way out of the cave, she says a reptilian stepped out. Bipedal, reptilian, humanoid looking thing, I mean, you know, and it flashed the light at her, and she woke up on a table in a craft, she assumed. And she was taken advantage of, and it's on the internet, you can go check it out. She swears by the story, she's been telling it for 35, 40 years now. That story is out here.
So what do you think it is behind the mountains that makes it so, I don't know, so many stories about it? What do you think causes that?
You know, I don't know. As a researcher, I hate to jump to conclusions and say I think it's this. I know that there are paranormal anomalies that never end. From the days of the Jesuits, to the Spanish, to the Mexican, to the Indians, to the Americans, things have happened. This mountain range has always been at the focal point. I know the government came in and turned it into a state wilderness. Now I got theories on that out west, right? America was filling up, and you got the National Park Service in 1919, right? Well, actually, it was 1912. The Grand Canyon became a park in 1919. That's the big one. But you have Yellowstone, Yosemite, all these places where paranormal activity happens, right? I don't know if you've been following that guy on the internet talking about missing people, 411.
Mm-hmm.
National parks. And if you are a government and you are controlling a phenomenon, what better way than to put it under the jurisdiction of the government? This became a state wilderness. Arizona has wildernesses, okay? We have state monuments and state parks, national monuments and national parks, and we have wildernesses. And these are really special areas. I think we got like 60 of them here. Only a man or a woman can go into a wilderness on foot with a horse. No motorized vehicles, can't even hang glide over them. The only time you can put a chopper in there is for a medical evac. So they are completely primitive. Even when the Forest Service comes in to do work on the trails, it's all saw and axes. They're not even allowed to use any electric or motorized stuff at all. So they are protecting these areas, and these areas do have a lot of paranormal activity. When I used to work over on the Yavapai Indian Reservation, just to the west of Phoenix, outside of Fountain Hills, one of their medicine men was, I would say a friend, but he was an acquaintance of mine. And I asked him, I said, why do you think that these areas out here on your res, he was telling me that they don't go out at nighttime because of the things that walk around at night, because of the little people, because of the invisible hairy people. He had all kinds of stories he used to tell me, right, straight from his mouth. And he says, well, he says, as someone who studies this and thinks about it for my people, I think it has to do with electrical fields. There was a lot of power in Phoenix back in the day, because Phoenix is a very ancient, powerful place. But as people grow and the electric lines come in and you guys industrialize it, those electrical fields, I think, push away these spirits and these entities from the other side. When you go out into the wilderness still, people decompress out there because you don't have those energies. You don't have the electric, the Wi-Fi. And he says, I think it has to do with that, why things can come over from the other side there. He says that's how he explains a lot of the paranormal stuff. And you guys are paranormal, and it would stand to reason that we know it is an electrical phenomenon. We know the computer was invented. The computer was invented to reach the other side. Did you guys know that?
No.
Research the origin of the computer and the guy that did it. He invented the computer to talk to the other side. That's where it came from.
I had no idea.
Yeah, there's some great stuff on the internet. Some old researchers that put that stuff together.
Cool.
Yeah,
it's all
paranormal
electricity
and technology
intertwined.
On my website, I talk at great length about sorcery and about energy and about mysticism and physics and how it's the same thing. Back in the day, you had a king, and a king hired an alchemist, and he was down in the basements mixing sulfur and trying to transmute lead into gold, right? Today, you got MIT and Texas Instruments, funded by the government, down there bending space and time in some government lab.
True.
For DARPA.
Interesting.
Right? Nothing's changed. When the old world sent the Mayflower over, when the Spanish and the French and the English, right, the pinnacle of modern civilization at that time, as soon as they had boats, they came over. They knew this was here. Everyone knew that the world wasn't flat. They were going to fall off the edge of it. Sorry for the flat earthers out there, by the way. But they took advantage of the resources and they monopolized on everything out here. They grabbed it and they secured it, and they are allocating it today. When we go to the moon, or when we go out into space, when humans leave space, it's not going to be the cashiers. It ain't going to be the farmers. It's going to be those same bloodlines and the same people in positions of power who have been controlling the path of humanity the whole time.
What do you think is your most definitive, Jesus, these bugs, personal story from the mountains when you've been out here? What have you experienced?
I've never told this story before. I'll tell it. It happened. It's true. God's my witness. I was at Burrow Creek, almost to Wickiup. Go to Wickenburg, then Wickiup is about half there. You'll find it on a map. And that bridge there, that canyon, a lot of death has happened there. And I was there about 2 o'clock in the morning coming back from Phoenix, and I was out there with my dog on the edge overlook. I was taking a break. I was so tired. And I had my knife on me. I carried a knife back in the day. I was shoved in the front of my pants here. And it was about a 3/4 moon night, maybe. And I was feeling, it was nice out first, and I started feeling creepy. Something was bad. Something was wrong. And then it went to something as...
See that light out there, by the way? Do you think that's a hiker?
Could be. Could very well be coming back from the waterfall. The trail runs right up there.
Is that a 3/4 moon?
We're just over a half. It's almost 3/4, yeah. But no, it's close. So it was definitely a well-lit night, and it went from feeling awkward and weird to the hair on the back of my neck to I'm in imminent danger. And I was looking around, and I looked. My dog was under the truck, and I thought, shit, something's going on here. And I don't know why. I looked up and to my left, backwards, and something was bearing down on me. And I instinctively rolled did an Aikido roll, I used martial arts. And when I came up, I grabbed my knife. But here's the weird part. As I was rolling, the thing buzzed me, and I heard it come by, and I heard cloth. It was wearing clothing, and it was flying. And this is a true story. And when I came back up, I pulled my knife out, and I screamed. You know, the adrenaline went, and it was fight or flight. And I can't remember what I even screamed now, but it went out probably about 30, 40 yards. It stopped, it turned, and it hovered right there. What felt like about a minute, but it couldn't have been more than about 3 or 4 seconds, 5 seconds maybe. And it looked, and the best way I can describe it is if you've seen Lord of the Rings, remember them things that ride those dragons with the black things on? Those things. It looked like that.
Ugh.
It looked like that. It was wearing a black cloth. And that's what tripped me out. It was, you know, it wasn't an owl, wasn't a hawk.
Ugh.
You know, it was hovering in space. It wasn't moving, it wasn't flying. It was hovering, and then it turned off to the southwest and went towards Greenwood Peak. And I watched it fly, and I watched it because the moon was bounced off, because it was a pretty bright night out, about a 3/4 moon night. That's the craziest damn thing I've ever seen out here in this desert.
That's bizarre.
I went home and I called one of my friends and asked him, you know, what he thought, and he's like, oh, I don't know what to tell you, man. Like, you know, what do you tell someone when they call you up at 3 o'clock in the morning and tell you that, you know? But that happened. That happened. I've been in a canyon and I found this little pile of dirt. It was red. I remember that, and I was kind of drawn to it, and I sat down on it. And I mean, within a minute, I got tired, and then I got more tired, and then my rifle dropped out of my hand, and I felt like I was having all the energy sucked out of me. That happened, and I remember laying there, and I woke my eyes, and I was just kind of laying there. My dog, she wouldn't come up on top of the mound. It wasn't any more than probably about 7, 8 feet across, and I don't know what was on that mound or what it was made of, but I knew I had to get off that mound or I was never going to get off it, so I kind of rolled over and I rolled off of it. And as soon as I rolled off this mound, like everything just snapped back into place and I was wide awake again. That happened.
Wow.
I have no idea. I wouldn't make that up, you know.
Yeah, I don't know why you would.
It happened. So, you know, there's a lot of stories. You spend enough time in the desert, and you'll start having some experiences. You know?
I bet. Well, we'll have to come back to the superstitions, man.
They say there's only 3 kinds of people that go to the desert: prophets, prospectors, and madmen.
Which one are you?
I don't know yet. I'm only 42. So that's a synopsis of the Superstition Mountains here. It's a holy shrine. It is an ancient volcanic nightmare of rock. It is a place where alien abductions happen. It is a place where people have been missing heads for over 100 years. It's a place where the Apaches and the Pimas are both reputed to be in here protecting. It's a never-ending wellspring of stories and mystery. It's right on the edge of Phoenix, Arizona, and
right over there.
Place. Beautiful.
You can see the lights.
Do you get pretty good footage with the lights below? That's kind of good.
Real quick before we get out of these woods, well, do you think a number of people then have just died throughout this area that haven't been found yet?
I think if all the bodies that are buried out here stood up at one time, it'd look like downtown Manhattan. Think about it, just from what we know of. Since we can trace it back here, we know that the archaic Indians were here, and then there were the basket weaving culture. Then you had the greater cultures. This area was the Hohokam. You had the Salados, the Sinagwins, the Mugians, the Patayans, all that going on here. Then you have the Spanish. They came through. And then you have the Mexicans, part of Mexico, right? Then you have America. And since America got here, I mean, good God, what have we done out here in these mountains? Yeah, there's Massacre Grounds, the killing fields, you know. So the Apaches were down here waging war for about 500 years before the Spanish got here and started whooping up on them. And the whole area is very turbulent. But if you get into the Pima creation stories, they talk about a time when there was an inland sea. We know that there was the Western Interior Sea that was up in here, it's all flooded. Strangely enough, they tell stories about this mountain range was not covered. So, and there's even maps where it's not covered on it that people have recreated, and someone found a petroglyph, I believe, and they believe it to be this sticking up out of the inland sea here.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a lot of research that's been done about the Mojave Desert between here and California, right? Mm-hmm. And the Salton Sea is drying up, but they believe just recently, I mean, really within 5,000 years, that the water went all the way up into there. They think it was a lot more recent, and it was a lot richer in area. Think about it, Phoenix, Arizona. You don't think of it as a river town, right? But it is. We got 6 rivers that dump into Phoenix. You got the Gila, the Salt, the Verde, Agua Fria, Hacienda, and New River. Where have the most ancient of civilizations come from? Deserts with perennial water sources coming through. Egypt, Samaria, northern India. These are the cradles of ancient civilization. Phoenix is on the same parallel. It has 6 rivers dumping into it on the most biologically diverse parallel on Earth. This is not a harsh environment. It's a paradise, you know? Each of these rivers is a riparian biome of cottonwoods and willows and deer and hundreds of edible plants, and we have fresh clams and fish, right? They can irrigate real gently off of all of these rivers. Every year, the White Mountains flood out, come down the Salt and the Gila, and it puts more nutrients back into it, just like on the Nile. I think the real history of Phoenix is yet to be written.
True.
I really do.
Interesting.
And why won't you go at the end of the day here at night? Like, what is your reasoning?
You know, I don't need to. I've walked across half the state of Arizona at one time or another. I don't backpack for recreation. I don't shoot for recreation anymore. I don't four-wheel drive for recreation. These are skills in my back pocket. When I'm four-wheeling, it's to get back somewhere. When I am utilizing my backcountry skills, it's because I'm on an expedition. I don't just go shooting for fun. It just seems weird to me at this stage of my life. I've shot so many guns. I don't go hiking either for fun very often unless I'm with my kids. If I'm hiking, I'm on an expedition. And, you know, I've just kind of avoided this mountain range for the last probably decade here. I've been through it when I was a kid, but I don't know why. I've just, something's pushing me out of it. I'll walk across the rest of the state at nighttime, and I have, but this mountain range, I don't know. Maybe we need to. Let's do it.
That's what I'm saying. We'll come back. That's what we're going to do. That's the plan.
I think we probably should. It's time, you know?
Hello.